Lucifer lost the war in heaven. But what if he never lost control? What if the battlefield didn't end? It just moved somewhere else. Not above, not below, but here, inside your mind. Because Lucifer doesn't need power anymore. He doesn't need armies. He doesn't need to fight. All he needs is a thought. Just one. A small idea that feels harmless. A question that sounds logical. A feeling that feels completely justified. And once it enters your mind, it doesn't leave. It grows, quietly, slowly, until one day, you don't even realize it's no longer your thought. So before you watch this video, I want you to do one thing. Pay attention to your own thoughts, not what you see, not what you hear, but what you think. Because by the end of this video, you might start questioning everything. If you're ready to see the truth most people ignore, hit subscribe now and watch until the end. Because the moment you look away, you've already missed it. After the fall, Lucifer did not disappear into nothingness, nor did he retreat into silence as many might imagine. His defeat in heaven was not an ending, but a transformation, one that shifted the battlefield from a place of visible power into something far more subtle and far more dangerous. He no longer needed armies, nor did he need to confront divine strength directly. Instead, he turned his attention to something fragile, something imperfect, something far easier to influence than any celestial being, the human mind. Unlike heaven, the human mind is not built on perfect harmony. It is not grounded in absolute truth. It is unstable, constantly shifting between thought and emotion, between certainty and doubt. It questions itself, challenges its own understanding, and often struggles to find clarity. And within those moments of uncertainty, within those quiet spaces where thoughts begin to form, there is an opening, an opportunity, a place where influence can exist without being noticed. Lucifer does not enter with force. He does not appear as fear, nor does he reveal himself in any form that would cause resistance. Instead, he arrives quietly, almost invisibly, as something so small it feels insignificant. A single thought, a question, a feeling that seems completely natural, completely personal. It does not feel foreign or intrusive. It feels like it belongs. Why am I not enough? Why do others have more than me? Why shouldn't I do what I want? At first, these thoughts seem harmless, even logical. They blend seamlessly into the mind, aligning with existing emotions, reinforcing what already feels real. And that is precisely what makes them so powerful. Because the moment a thought feels like your own, you stop questioning where it came from. You accept it, not as something external, but as something that originated within you. From that point on, the process unfolds naturally. One thought leads to another. A question becomes a pattern, and patterns begin to form beliefs. Those beliefs, repeated over time, begin to shape perception, how you see yourself, how you see others, and how you interpret the world around you. There is no sudden change, no dramatic shift that signals something is wrong. Instead, it happens slowly, quietly, almost imperceptibly. What once felt uncertain begins to feel justified. What once felt like doubt begins to feel like truth. And then something even deeper occurs. You begin to defend it. The thought is no longer just an idea. It becomes part of your identity. You protect it, reinforce it, and build upon it, often without realizing that its origin was never truly yours. Because by the time it reaches that point, the line between what was introduced and what was created has already disappeared. Lucifer does not need to control actions directly. He does not need to force decisions or manipulate outcomes in obvious ways. Instead, he allows the mind to construct its own reality, guiding it only at the beginning. Once the structure is in place, it sustains itself. It grows stronger, more convincing, more difficult to question. And that is what makes it so dangerous. Because you will never see him. You will never hear him. But his presence will exist in every thought you never questioned, in every belief you accepted without hesitation, in every moment where you chose something without ever asking why. And the most unsettling truth is this: the moment a thought feels completely yours is often the moment it is hardest to escape. Once a thought is accepted, it does not remain still. It grows, not suddenly, not violently, but gradually, so subtly that it feels like a natural progression rather than a change. What begins as a single idea starts to connect with others, forming patterns that seem logical, even necessary. The mind, by its very nature, seeks consistency. It wants to make sense of itself. And so, it begins to build. Lucifer does not rush this process. He does not need to. Time is his greatest advantage. The first thought becomes a question. The question becomes a perspective. And the perspective begins to shape how everything else is seen. At this stage, nothing feels wrong. In fact, it often feels like clarity, like understanding something that was once hidden. The mind begins to reinterpret past experiences, filtering them through this new perspective. Moments that once seemed insignificant now appear meaningful. Events that once felt neutral begin to carry weight. And slowly, a pattern emerges, a narrative that feels personal, unique, and undeniably true. But this truth is not absolute. It is constructed. And once the mind begins constructing its own version of truth, it becomes incredibly difficult to separate perception from reality. Lucifer's influence is not about inserting constant thoughts. It is about planting the first one, then allowing the mind to do the rest. Because the human mind is powerful, not just in its ability to think, but in its ability to justify. It can take a single idea and build an entire belief system around it, reinforcing it from every angle, protecting it from contradiction. And that is where the real transformation begins. What was once a thought becomes belief, and belief becomes identity. At this point, the process is no longer external. It is internalized. The mind no longer questions the thought because it no longer sees it as separate. It becomes part of who you are. Your decisions begin to align with it. Your reactions begin to reflect it. Your actions begin to follow it, naturally, effortlessly. You do not feel controlled. You feel certain, and certainty is powerful. It eliminates doubt. It removes hesitation. It gives direction, even when that direction is flawed. Because once you are certain, you no longer look for alternative perspectives. You stop questioning. You stop analyzing. You stop resisting. And that is exactly where Lucifer wants you. Not aware of his presence, not resisting his influence, but fully convinced that everything you think is entirely your own. By the time a person reaches this stage, there is no clear moment where everything changed. There is no point in time they can look back to and say, "This is where it started," because the change was never sudden. It was layered, built slowly over time, thought by thought, belief by belief. And that is what makes it so difficult to break. Because to question the thought now is to question yourself, and most people will choose to protect their identity, even if it was never truly theirs to begin with. Control is never as obvious as people imagine. It does not arrive with force, nor does it announce itself with clear intention. There is no moment where a person suddenly realizes they have lost control. No visible line that separates what was once theirs from what no longer is. Instead, control exists in a space where resistance no longer feels necessary, where every thought, every decision, every action feels justified. And that is what makes it so effective. By the time control begins to take hold, it no longer feels like control at all. It feels like choice. The thoughts that were once questioned are now accepted without hesitation. The ideas that once seemed uncertain are now defended with confidence. The mind, having built its own structure of belief, now protects it. It reinforces it. It expands it. And slowly, without realizing it, a person begins to act in alignment with something they never consciously chose. Lucifer does not command actions. He reshapes perception, and perception defines reality. If you believe something strongly enough, you do not see alternatives. You do not seek contradiction. You do not doubt your direction. Instead, you move forward with certainty, unaware that the path itself was influenced long before you ever began to walk it. This is where control becomes complete, not when a person is forced, but when they are convinced. Because once conviction takes over, there is nothing left to resist. The mind no longer recognizes influence as something external. It sees it as truth. It sees it as identity. And identity is the most powerful force of all. A person will defend who they believe they are, even when that belief is built on something fragile, something constructed, something that was never entirely theirs. They will justify their actions, explain their decisions, and reject anything that challenges their understanding, not because they are controlled, but because they believe they are right, and that is the final stage. There is no need for manipulation anymore, no need for subtle influence, because everything continues on its own. Lucifer does not take control. He waits. He introduces the thought and allows you to build the rest. Until one day, without ever realizing when it happened, you are no longer following the thought. The thought is guiding you. The most terrifying part of all this is not the existence of Lucifer. It is the silence of his influence. Because there is no voice, no presence you can clearly identify, no moment where you can say, "This is where it began." Everything feels natural. Every thought feels like it belongs to you. Every emotion feels justified. Every decision feels intentional. And that is exactly why it is so difficult to recognize. By the time a thought becomes part of your identity, it is no longer questioned. It is defended. It is protected. It becomes something you hold on to, something you believe defines you. And anything that challenges it feels like a threat, not just to your thinking, but to who you are. This is where the illusion becomes complete, because the deeper the belief, the stronger the attachment. And the stronger the attachment, the harder it becomes to step back and ask a simple but powerful question. Is this really mine? Most people never ask, not because they cannot, but because it feels unnecessary. The thought already makes sense. It already feels true. And once something feels true, the mind rarely searches beyond it. But truth and feeling are not always the same, and that is where the danger lies. Lucifer's influence is not about forcing you into darkness. It is about guiding you just enough so that you walk there on your own, step by step, thought by thought, decision by decision, until one day you arrive somewhere you never intended to be, and yet every step felt like your own choice. That is the illusion of control. Not that you are being controlled, but that you believe you never were. And the most unsettling realization is this: if a single thought can shape your beliefs, and your beliefs can shape your identity, then who you are today may not be entirely your own creation. It may be something that was built quietly, patiently, over time, from a beginning you never noticed. And if that is true, then the question is no longer whether Lucifer exists. The question is, how many of your thoughts have you never truly questioned?